I remember the night vividly. A few years ago, I went camping in Patagonia. I'm a wildlife photographer, so I'm used to being alone in nature. I wanted to capture the mountains and lakes. I found a quiet spot between towering peaks and set up my tent by a beautiful lake. The first day went perfectly. The light was amazing, and I took dozens of photos. After dinner, I crawled into my tent, tired and happy. I didn't expect anything unusual. Around midnight, I heard something. It was faint but constant. Footsteps, maybe. I wasn't sure at first. I thought it was just an animal. I had seen plenty of wildlife. But these footsteps were different. They were steady and close, like someone was pacing outside my tent. My heart started racing as I strained to hear. I listened hard, staring at the tent walls, waiting for something to happen. As the days passed, the footsteps grew louder. It felt like they were getting closer every night. I noticed strange shadows flitting between the trees. I even saw odd carvings on some rocks nearby. They looked ancient, but I didn't know what they meant. My camera also caught strange shapes beyond what I could see. It made me uneasy. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I hadn't spoken to anyone all day. I told myself, it's just nature. You're alone out here. But deep down, I felt uneasy. I began questioning if I was really alone. One night, I decided to step outside the tent, desperate to see what was making those sounds. It was freezing, and the darkness felt heavy. I scanned the trees, feeling like something was out there. The moonlight barely pierced the thick branches, casting eerie shadows everywhere. My heart was racing, but I took a deep breath, trying hard to stay calm. Then I heard it again. A footstep, closer this time. It sent chills down my spine. Hello? Is someone there? I called out, though I didn't know why. Silence surrounded me. The thick silence felt wrong. An overwhelming feeling of being watched washed over me. My instincts screamed at me to run back to my tent, but I stood there, frozen. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. Then, just when I thought it was over, the footsteps stopped. I turned to go back. That's when I saw something. A figure hiding behind a tree, just out of the moonlight. It asked, "Why are you here?" My heart raced. I stepped back, but when I looked again, it was gone. The footsteps returned that night. They never stopped until I left in the morning. I packed up quickly, my hands shaking. To this day, I still wonder who or what was out there with me. How could it just disappear? I can't explain it. The memory haunts me. The next few days were a blur. I drove home, my mind racing with questions. I told myself it was just an overactive imagination, but how could I dismiss what I experienced? I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something lurking behind me. Back in my studio, I developed the photos I took during the trip. As I sifted through them, I felt a knot in my stomach. Most of the images came out beautifully, but something nagged at me. Several shots were blurred or skewed. I was meticulous with my camera settings. It didn't make sense. My heart raced as I studied those photos closely. That's when I noticed something strange. In the background of one photo, something stood among the trees. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, but it looked too substantial. I zoomed in and there it was, a dark figure, vaguely humanoid, with no discernible features. My breath quickened. I remembered that same feeling of being watched. The sensation returned, prickling at the back of my neck. I needed to know more, so I looked up the history of the area. What I found shocked me. The land where I camped was rumored to be cursed, inhabited by spirits of those who had vanished into the wilderness without a trace. Locals spoke of an ancient protector, a figure that watched over the woods and not always kindly. My mind raced. Could it be that I crossed paths with something far beyond my understanding? Feeling restless, I grabbed my gear and decided to return. This time, I was determined to confront whatever was out there. I packed my tent, camera, and a flashlight, the fear bubbling up inside me. As I set up camp in the familiar spot by the lake, the unease washed over me again. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the darkness settled in thick and heavy. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread. After all, I had come prepared this time. The first night was quiet. I slept lightly, jumping at every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig. But by the second night, something changed. It started with a low sound, like distant whispers threading through the trees. I sat up in my sleeping bag, heart racing again. The sound grew louder, more distinct, almost beckoning. I forced myself to venture outside. Clutching my flashlight, I scanned the darkness. The whispers faded, replaced by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow and measured, just as I had heard before. Panic set in as I moved toward the source, but the words of the locals echoed in my head. "Do not wander off at night," they warned. "Do not awaken the protector." Despite the warning, I pressed on. I was not leaving without answers. Then everything changed. The light from my flashlight flickered, and I felt a sudden chill wrap around me. I quickly turned, my instincts screaming. That's when I saw it. The figure from the photo stood at the edge of the trees, its eyes glinting in the dark like twin stars. I froze, transfixed by its presence, a mix of fear and curiosity coursing through me. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't alone anymore. My heart pounded in my chest, each thought echoing in the silence of the night. The figure stood there, unmoving, as if it were a statue carved from the darkness itself. I felt a deep instinct to run, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. Instead, I stood frozen, captivated and terrified. Then, in the distance, I heard another sound. It wasn't the whispers this time, but rather a low growl, rumbling through the trees like thunder. It wasn't coming from the figure. It was deeper, closer. Suddenly, the air felt thicker, charged with something unnameable. "Who are you?" I called out, forcing my voice to break the tension. There was no response, just the rustle of leaves and the growl growing louder. My instincts screamed at me to retreat, but curiosity kept me rooted. I shifted my flashlight, directing it at the figure. It seemed to absorb the light, its edges blurring and shifting, almost mocking my attempts to pierce the night. I wanted to scream, to run, but I held my ground. Then, the figure began to move, gliding toward me with a fluid grace that sent a bolt of fear down my spine. It was then I noticed the ground beneath my feet wet and muddy from earlier rain, and I felt something shift, like the earth was alive beneath me. The shadows in the trees deepened, and I felt a fresh wave of dread wash over me. That was when I heard it again, a soft crunch, unmistakably close. Someone or something was behind me. Panic surged like wildfire in my veins. My instincts kicked in, and I turned to shine my flashlight into the dense thicket behind me. Nothing. I steadied my breath, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the hairs on my neck stood on end, and the low growl continued to rumble, now sounding almost playful. I focused on the figure once more. It had stopped, watching me, or was it watching something else behind me? "Show yourself!" I shouted, my voice cracking. I took a slow step backward, my heart racing as my instincts screamed at me to be cautious. I was losing my resolve. As I stepped back, I stumbled over a root that snaked out of the ground. I hit the damp earth, dropping my flashlight. The light flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in as I fumbled around for my flashlight, hands shaking. That's when I felt a presence above me, a looming shadow blocking the faint moonlight. I looked up, and the figure was closer now, its shape less defined. I reached for the flashlight just as it flickered back on, illuminating the scene ahead. What I saw made my blood run cold. Another figure stood behind me, identical to the first. My heart raced. How could there be two? With panic flooding my mind, I scrambled back, but I collided with something solid. I turned to find myself face to face with a larger, more hunched silhouette. Whatever it was looming over me. Breathlessly, I realized the whispering had returned, wrapping around me like a tangible thing, coaxing me to listen. I was not prepared for what came next. I gasped, scrambling to my feet as fear electrified my senses. The larger figure above me moved slightly, and I caught a glimpse of a twisted face, half hidden by shadows. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were dark voids that swallowed the faint light. I stumbled backward, trying to put distance between us. The two figures remained still, watching me with an intensity that felt invasive. My mind raced to comprehend the situation, but logic fled as the growl behind me surged to a high-pitched snarl. I spun around, shining the flashlight into the trees. The beam caught a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me, and my breath hitched. I had to think fast. My heart raced, and my throat went dry. The terrain was treacherous, but the path behind me seemed like the only option. I had to get away. I turned to face the hunched figure again, and that's when I noticed the way the shadows danced around it, almost alive, as if they were part of something vast and terrible. "Get back!" I shouted, my voice shaking. The smaller figures only tilted their heads, strangely curious. It was unsettling to watch. I ran. My feet pushed against the muddy earth, slipping a little with each frantic step. I could hear the subtle rustling behind me, the growls morphed into quicker, clipped sounds that echoed through the night. No more hesitation. I dashed toward the trees, desperate for their cover. My mind raced with thoughts of escape, but the whispering grew louder, swirling around me, encouraging me to stop, to turn. I almost stumbled again, but I kept moving before the urge to look back could overtake me. I burst into the thicket, the branches scratching at my arms and face like desperate hands. I pushed through, branches snapping underfoot, heart racing as I fought my way deeper into the wood. The growl amplified, a low rumble that vibrated through me. I could hear the figures closing in, a synchronized movement that was eerily calculated. Then came silence. I stopped, panting hard, leaning against a tree. My pulse thundered in my ears. Had I lost them? I took a moment to catch my breath, straining against the darkness around me, listening. Just when I thought I could calm down, I heard something that made the hair on my arms stand up. Soft footsteps, quiet but purposeful, crunching leaves on the ground. They were still hunting me. I pressed my back against the rough bark, heart pounding louder now. I would have to move again. It felt unsafe here, exposed. That's when I spotted a faint glow through the trees, pulsing like a heartbeat. Could it be a way out, a campfire, or something worse? Taking a deep breath, I started toward it. The rustling behind me resumed, closer and more urgent. I broke into a sprint once more, my instincts pushing me forward, driven by raw fear. The glow grew brighter, illuminating my path, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping deeper into a trap. With each step, I wondered if I would find safety or confront whatever nightmare was following me. The air was thick with tension, and I knew I was not alone in the darkness. Just then, I froze. What I saw next would define that night forever. A figure loomed ahead, silhouetted against the faint glow. It was tall and thin, its limbs unnaturally long. Panic surged through me as I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The light flickered, revealing a small campfire surrounded by large rocks. But there was no one tending it. The shadows danced around the fire, creating shapes that distorted the space. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. The rustling sounds behind me grew louder, pushing me toward the light, as if it held the promise of salvation. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I was drawn closer, despite every instinct warning me to turn back. Just as I stepped forward, the fire flared and illuminated the area more brightly. That's when I saw them, two figures seated on the ground, faces obscured by hoods. Their eyes glowed in the light, reflecting a cold intensity that chilled me to the bone. I stumbled back, heart racing wildly. Where did they come from? I turned, intent on fleeing, but my foot caught on something. I tumbled to the ground, grappling for balance. Panic coursed through me as I heard footsteps again, strong, deliberate, drawing nearer from behind. I scrambled up, adrenaline pushing my body to a desperate sprint away from the fire and toward the safety of the thicket. Branches clawed at me as I ran, but I didn't stop. I didn't dare look back. The growls were in my ears again, low and furious, mingling with the sound of rapid footsteps gaining on me. I knew I had to reach the trees, to lose myself among their shadows. Just as I broke through the last of the underbrush, something cold and wet smacked against my face, a splash of mud from the ground. It struck me that the night was alive with chaos. I could hear my breath, ragged and urgent, mixing with the rustles behind me. Were they right on my heels? I had to think. My eyes scanned the darkness ahead. I spotted a gnarled tree root jutting out of the ground, perfect for hiding. I dove down beside it, muffling my breath and pressing my back against the coarse bark. The shadows around me pulsed with movement. I could see those figures now, flitting through the underbrush, their eyes flickering in the dark like lanterns. They were searching for me. Suddenly, the growls intensified into a feverish rage. I held my breath as it echoed in the stillness, blood pounding in my ears. They must have been closing in, but I couldn't let them find me. I had to stay quiet, stay hidden. Just then, something brushed against my leg, and the world froze. A paw, warm and heavy. I stifled a gasp, recognizing the low growl resonating from deep within its throat. I barely moved, instincts screaming that I was not alone. The creature moved closer, and I felt its breath on my skin. I could only wait for whatever was about to happen next. What I felt next would change everything. The moment stretched endlessly, a tangled web of fear and anticipation. The heavy paw lingered against my leg, almost comforting in its warmth but still terrifying. I dared to glance down, my heart pounding harder when I saw its massive, muscular frame. A wolf, or something similar, but somehow more feral. Its eyes gleamed in the dark, reflecting what little light pierced the canopy above us. I barely breathed as it sniffed at my leg, registering my presence. The growls had stopped, and my panic began to shift to confusion. Was it friend or foe? Then it stepped back slightly, tilting its head as if sensing my fear. I remembered the stories, the tales of mystical creatures in these woods that were both guide and menace. Just then, the shadows returned. The figures from the campfire were near, their voices a murmur laced with urgency. "We need to find it before it's too late," one whispered, the other nodding in agreement. Their footfalls grew louder again, brushing against the dry leaves, so close I could almost make out their words. I risked another look. They were hunched now, scanning the trees around me, clearly searching for something or someone. My shoulders tightened. I was in their sights. Moments later, the wolf suddenly threw its head back and let out a deep, powerful howl that echoed through the night. My heart sank. The growls were back, blending with the howl, creating an orchestra of sound that filled the air with dread. The figures froze, their attention snapping to the noise. "Over there!" one of them shouted, pointing in my direction. My instincts kicked in, and I pressed myself deeper into the roots, willing myself to disappear. But as they broke into a sprint toward me, I felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness from the creature beside me. Before I could comprehend what it meant, the wolf surged forward, its body launching into the shadows toward the figures. I barely registered what I was witnessing as it tore through the night, fangs bared. "Wait! No!" one of the hoods shouted, but it was too late. The moment was chaotic. The wolf lunged, and the figures stumbled backward, their eyes wide with shock. I could hardly breathe, torn between the instinct to escape and the pull of what was happening. Then I saw something glinting from one of the figure's pockets that flickered in the firelight. A knife? A jagged gleam of metal that sent sparks through the air. In that instant, it all clicked. They weren't just looking for me, they had a purpose, and it was hidden somewhere in this forest. My decision was made. I stood, my legs shaking as I rose from my cover. The wolf had created the distraction I needed. I needed to know what they were after. I took a step forward, adrenaline surging through me, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. But before I could move, the ground trembled, and everything went dark. What had I just walked into? Everything shifted in an instant. The world closed in around me. I couldn't feel the ground beneath my feet anymore. The air hummed, thick and heavy, like the calm before a storm. Then, just as quickly, I was falling. A jolt of panic rushed through me as the darkness swallowed me whole. I crashed onto something soft, a shallow pit or perhaps an old, rotted log. My breath hitched in my throat. I pushed myself up, blinking against the sudden dimness, trying to orient myself. The wolf's howl had faded into the distance, swallowed by whatever strange space I'd fallen into. I could hear voices now, low and tense, echoing from above. "She can't be far," one voice said, filled with urgency. "We split up. I'll check this side." I could see the shadows of their figures shifting, darting overhead, searching for anything that moved. I couldn't stay here. I crawled slowly, trying to keep my breathing steady. I needed to find a way out. My hands shook as I pushed myself forward, feeling around for solid ground, something I could push against to climb back. What were these men looking for? That's when I felt something cold and metallic brushing against my fingertips. I pulled it closer, squinting in the dim light. It was a small, tarnished locket, its edges worn but the surface still glossy. I flipped it open with shaking hands. Inside, a faded photograph of a girl, maybe in her early teens, stared back at me. My heart raced again. Who was she, and what was she doing here? I tucked the locket into my pocket, deciding I needed to know more. Then I heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps headed my way. They sounded closer now, the ground trembling with each thud. I froze, my instincts screaming to move but knowing I couldn't make a sound. I pressed myself flat against the ground, heart pounding faster. Over here. I think I found something. One of the figures shouted. Their voice was closer now, sounding desperate. I couldn't tell if they were talking about me or something else. Had they found my hiding spot? But then another voice called back, no. Stay together. We don't know what we're dealing with. The tension in the air thickened, leaving me breathless. What were they afraid of? Suddenly, the wolf's feral growl echoed from somewhere above, sending chills down my spine. It seemed to be standing guard, but I couldn't tell where. I heard the figures shift uneasily, their murmurs growing frantic. It was my chance to escape. I crawled backward, inching away from the voices and toward a faint glimmer of light that beckoned from deeper in the darkness. Just as I turned to make my move, the ground beneath me shifted again, and I slipped down into another hole. Get the light! A figure screamed above, but this one just some pit. No, it was a narrow tunnel, damp and musty, twisting downward into the unknown. I had no choice but to go deeper, leaving the figures and whatever they were after behind. As I descended into darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just stumbled into something much bigger than myself. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever. The walls were slick with moisture, and my palms slipped against the earth as I crawled. The dim light behind me faded quickly, swallowed by the unyielding darkness. I could hear my own breath echoing around me, but I was too scared to make a sound. All I wanted was to escape the chaos above. I pushed forward, heart racing with each movement. What had I gotten myself into? I had only come to camp in this secluded area, to experience the beauty of the wilderness and get away from it all. Now, I was fleeing from some unseen threat, tumbling through the earth as voices faded into eerie silence. Soon, the tunnel opened up into a small chamber. The air felt different here, cooler. I paused, standing awkwardly in the darkness, straining to listen. My pulse felt loud in my ears, louder than the soft drips of water from the stone ceiling. Was someone down here with me? There it was again, footsteps. They sounded distant but moving closer. I crouched low, pressing my back against the damp wall as I tried to steady my breath. Fear coiled in my stomach. I had to find somewhere to hide. As I scanned the chamber, my eyes caught a glimpse of something sparkling on the ground. Curiosity momentarily overtook my fear. I edged closer, the footsteps growing louder, more deliberate. It was a shard of glass, perhaps a fragment of a bottle long forgotten. I picked it up, its edge sharp and glinting in what little light filtered in. I held it tightly, ready to defend myself if needed. The footsteps paused. I barely dared to breathe. My heart hammered as I looked around, half expecting someone to step into view, but the darkness remained cold and empty. Then, a low growl echoed from deeper in the chamber. It was not the howl of a wolf, but something much deeper, much more primal. Suddenly, two eyes pierced the blackness ahead of me, a pair of yellow eyes that shimmered like stars in the night sky. I froze, the hair on the back of my neck prickling in warning. As the figure moved forward, I could make out the outlines of a large creature, muscles rippling under its thick fur. It appeared to be a wolf but larger, somehow more menacing, and I realized I was not alone. Backing away slowly, my mind raced. I was trapped down here, with no way to escape. I glanced at the tunnel I had crawled through. There was no way I'd fit back through with that creature now blocking my path. With a sudden burst of madness, I darted to the side, looking for another way out. The creature lunged, and I barely dodged its swipe, feeling the rush of wind as it just missed me. I ran deeper into the chamber, hoping there was an exit somewhere, that's when I saw a faint glimmer ahead. Could it be a way out? I charged toward it, praying for a chance at escape. And just as I reached the light, I heard a voice behind me, one of the men from before, calling my name. The fear of being caught by the creature surged through me. Would I have to choose between the unknown dangers above or the predator behind me? Both seemed ready to claim me. I hesitated at the edge of the light, torn between two fears that felt equally deadly. The voice calling my name was muffled, barely reaching me over the growl that reverberated through the chamber. My breath hitched, and instinct kicked in. I couldn't stay here. I dashed toward the light, my feet pounding against the cold ground. The glow intensified and soon revealed a narrow tunnel that branched off to the left. I could hear the creature's heavy breathing behind me. It was gaining on me. The light from the tunnel flickered, dancing strangely as I approached. I hoped it led to safety, but I couldn't take any chances. Without looking back, I veered into the tunnel, unsure of where it led. My heart raced as I pushed myself forward, each step echoing against the walls in an ominous rhythm. The creature pursued me, its breath hot against my neck, filling me with dread. The narrow passage seemed to close in, but I could not think of that. I had to keep moving then. Just as I thought I'd escaped, the ground beneath my feet shifted. I stumbled, nearly losing my balance. Panic surged through me as I groped for stability. In the dim light, I could see my surroundings begin to change. The tunnel walls turned slicker, wet with moisture gathering like a chilling reminder of my desperation. I pressed on but struggled to keep my wits. Each footfall felt like a countdown. The growl behind me transformed into a snarl, reverberating through the tunnel and sending a jolt of fear through my veins. I could barely suppress a whimper. Would it catch me in this narrow space where I had nowhere to turn? Ahead, I noticed an opening. A crack in the wall glowed faintly, promising a chance to escape. I sprinted toward it, my mind racing with thoughts of freedom. I couldn't let the creature catch me. It couldn't. But what lay ahead? Just before I reached the opening, I realized too late the tunnel was not a simple exit. It was a small alcove, barely larger than a closet. With no time to think, I dove inside, squeezing myself into the tight space. My body collided with the cold stone as I pressed against the wall, desperately hoping the creature wouldn't notice me. The growls morphed into a harsh panting sound, the creature stopping just outside my hiding place. Its face was close enough that I could see the bristles of its fur catching the light as it sniffed the air. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my ears. Would it find me? It lingered, and I could feel my pulse race faster than ever. Then, in a shocking twist, the voices above returned, shouting, frantic. They were looking for me. Where did she go? I heard one of them scream. Relief washed over me, but then a chilling realization struck. The creature turned its attention toward the voices, growling low and menacingly. I watched in horror as its yellow eyes flicked back in my direction, as if sensing me. Would it go after them? Or come back for me? The choice of escape was fading fast. Suddenly, I heard another sound, footsteps, louder this time, coming down the entrance I'd just escaped. I had to act. The sound of footsteps grew closer, the voices above still shouting in confusion. It was a chance, but my heart raced as I squeezed deeper into the alcove, desperate to hide. I could hardly bear the thought of being discovered, but the tension was palpable. The creature remained close, its breath rasping sharply in the shadowy space. Suddenly, the growl erupted into a fierce snarl, and a moment later, I felt the cold brush of the creature's fur against my hand as it turned its attention away from me. The voices were transforming into frantic commands, and I suddenly understood that they were drawing near, dangerously close to the alcove where I was trapped. I knew I had to act quickly. Gripping the shard of glass tightly, I slowly pushed my body against the wall to peer out. The glowing eyes of the creature remained fixed on the approaching figures, its posture tense, as if preparing to strike. With no time to lose, I darted my eyes between the snarling creature and the rapidly approaching men. The choice hit me like a brick wall: stay hidden until they find me or confront this thing trying to deter them. Both options felt like stepping into an abyss. I took a deep breath and steeled myself. I didn't want to be left at the mercies of both a creature with unknown motives and men whose purpose seemed just as shrouded in darkness. All right, I murmured to myself, it's now or never. I pushed myself forward, no longer caring to stay hidden. As I crawled out into the dim light of the tunnel, chaos erupted. The creature lunged toward the men as they burst into the chamber, but my instincts kicked and I shouted, "Run! It's not safe!" My voice echoed in the cavernous space, but it didn't matter. It was enough to divert attention back to me. The figures paused for the briefest moment, faces contorted in shock, giving me just enough time to sprint past them and further into the darkness of the tunnel. I could feel the tension in the air shift dramatically, but I didn't look back. I gasped for breath, pushing ahead until I spotted a faint light illuminating the way. As I barreled toward it, shadows flitted around me, remnants of the chaos from moments before, and the growling creature no longer chased me. But I could sense it lurking behind. The glow ahead was still out of reach, but I surged on, fueled by sheer adrenaline. The tunnel branched off into wider passages and bizarre twists, but instinct guided me. I could hear the shouts of the men echoing through the caverns, punctuated by urgency as they debated what to do next. Was this place a trap? A labyrinth designed to disorient? I felt my heart pounding as I dashed out of the tunnel and stumbled into a clearing just as dawn began to break. The contrast between the eerie darkness of the caves and the fresh breath of morning air brought a rush of clarity. I wasn't out of danger yet. In the distance, I saw the men I had left behind, circling a large, gnarled tree that appeared ancient and wise. They seemed to be gathering supplies, glancing nervously around them, as though they expected the creature to follow. Bile rose in my throat. Why were they here? The wolf? The figures? The locket? Everything felt like a puzzle with pieces I couldn't connect. I stepped back into the shadows, watching their movements. My hands still tightened around the shard of glass. Whispers tugged at the edges of my consciousness, the echo of the growling and the urgency of the hunt, but I simply couldn't make sense of what had happened. One of the men turned, feeling my presence, but before he could spot me, I slipped further into the underbrush, shadows consuming me once more. Questions bubbled up in my mind, remnants of what I had witnessed, the murmurs that seemed to taunt me. Who were they really? What was the protector? Would I ever leave these woods behind, free from the grotesque beauty of that night? I took one last glance at the clearing, uncertainty pooling in my stomach, then faded deeper into the trees, my escape not yet guaranteed. In those woods, nothing felt resolved. I couldn't escape the feeling that someone or something was still watching me, lingering in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The memory would haunt me long after I left.